Wonderful. Hello, everyone. Those of you all that are joining us, if you can put where you're joining us from in the chat, let us know where you're joining us from. You'll also be able to put questions in the chat, and as you put them in the chat, then our panelists will be able to answer those questions for you. And we'll make sure that we make time throughout the portion of this episode to be able to set aside some time to be able to chat. Can somebody give me a thumbs up to let me know that they can hear me? Hi, Elder James, joining us from Dallas, Texas. Thank you for joining us. Wonderful. Everybody can hear me okay? Absolutely wonderful. So during the time that we're here, we're on Zoom. If you hear something that sounds funny, in the at the bottom of your screen, you should see something called emotions or responses, and you'll be able to laugh, or you'll be able to clap your hand, or you'll be able to do a hearts emoji just to share if there's something that has been said that speaks to your heart or your emotions. Just go ahead and share any of those different emoticons. So want to thank everybody for joining us. This is our Green Couch Conversations, where this is a podcast that discusses conversations at the intersection of theology, money, and faith. We exist to empower faithful stewardship. This is our second episode where we are talking about clergy taxes, advanced issues, errors, and retirement planning. We have the same panel that joined us last time. As you all know, my friend, big brother, Reverend David Yancy. I always like to talk about the fact that he is married to my big sister, who is joining us today. She is on. And for the time that I have lived in Memphis, we have lived 7 minutes away from each other. And so that has always been a joy, a fun fact for us. And when I moved and purchased my home in another part of the city, they built their home. And yes, they are 7 minutes away from me still. And so it is amazing to have them close by. I gleaned from Reverend Yancy in regards to how he organizes and does church administration and taxes. When I began pastoring, he was my go-to and on speed dial for many of questions in regards to church finances and as well as personal finances. So I definitely want Reverend Yancy to share a bit about his background, which is extensive and very unique. And then once Dr. Crittle is able to join us, he is going to join us a little bit later. But once he is able to come back on, he'll be able to share a bit about himself. But for the meantime, Reverend Yancy and I will carry on our conversation. Reverend Yancy, can you share your background with the people?
Yes, good afternoon, and thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure to share um, about stewardship and how God is blessing us to be great disciples and to do unto others as you would have them to do unto you. I left Memphis, Tennessee in '77. I was an athlete in high school and played in the marching band, jazz band. My mother and father gave me permission to even play downtown, saxophone, flute, harmonica, and play in the nightclubs as long as I was able to get up and go to church on Sunday morning. So the discipline to uh, just be creative and uh, use the skills that you have uh, just carried me and catapulted me in the military. After 28 years, I retired and came back home to Memphis. While in the military, I continued to teach. I went to college for my for my associate's degree. It took me 7 years to get an associate's degree because of moving around. Uh, but the blessing was the government sent me to school to finish my bachelor's degree in banking and finance, and then I had to allow 3 more years in a Pacific field of their choice, which was the comptroller field. And I received all the practical application that we're going to discuss today back in the late 80s. In 3 years, I did everything coming up under the finance, budgeting, auditing, you name it. So in 2008, I moved into the faith practice of stepping out and started my own business, Yancy Management and Consulting. Uh, the rest is pretty much history in regards to right now we're into about $3 million worth of clients, and we're just thanking God for the process. I'm on sabbatical from pastoring. Um, so my wife and I, we just continue to move forward and support people and meet them where they are. And God has continued to just open doors and bless us with people like yourself and your listening audience.
Yeah, there were a couple things that you left out that I do want to highlight. What does it mean to be, and let me make sure that I have this term correctly. It is a IRS, what is it called? IRS
Oh,
agent?
IRS enroll agent. It's a
Uh-huh.
certificate and it gives you permission to represent people for the IRS on behalf of them having questions. IRS send them letters and you can make the appointments with the IRS. And on your income taxes, around page 2 of your 1040 is say, do you want a third party or have a third party representing you? You can check yes or no. If you check yes, it'll be people like myself and others that will represent you.
Awesome. I do want to start out with the importance of making sure that the person that is handling your taxes has some form of knowledge and understanding of dealing with clergy specific situation. If somebody is trying to find someone to be able to uh, do their taxes, what kind of questions should they ask to see whether or not that person is the person they need to go to uh for tax services?
Well, Dr. John will be on in a few minutes, and every tax agency or IRS, I worked with them for about several years, even in their overseas office while I lived in Japan. And every office has different ways that you can vet them, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things you want to do is get some referrals. The other item is to see if they have a IRS code that allows them to actually do taxes, and they can show it to you. It's just like your driver's license. Uh, the the thing to listen for, I would say, is what should they be asking you for? One easy question is for them to know your history and know your path. They should ask you for the last few years of your taxes to get a feel for what you have been doing so you don't raise any eyebrows to the IRS or you stay within some consistent level that you've set a pattern for.
Mm-hmm.
So, and the referrals and just a reputable company and just asking them about things that you know. Don't try to test them and ask questions that that you don't know the answer for. Just ask things that you know and what's
Mm-hmm.
going on with your taxes.
Yeah. I think one of the crucial things that I've heard in regards to clergy persons filing taxes is this duality that they have, and
Mhm.
how that's really not for the common person that doesn't have a tax background, how that's not really clear. Can you speak to that duality as a person that is considered clergy by tax definition and what that means?
Well, the profession that a person receives their W-2 forms from or their 1099 forms from, the individual needs to file a 1040. So that's the part that their profession, if they're working with FedEx, they're working with the airline, they're working for the church, working for the university. That's going to be the individual tax roll. If you're clergy or if you're a business owner, then the duology part that you receive an income from another source that allows you benefits and options, such as clergy. On a W-2, clergy is the only one that receives housing allowance, for an example,
Mm-hmm.
without being a corporation, without being a separate entity, simply because of their profession. they're going to receive housing allowance. Uh, there are some exceptions with other professions. It used to be doctors travel miles away from home. They could have a home in another resident, or they can another city or another county. But now, when we're talking about clergy, that's one unique to clergy. The W-2 will allow housing allowance to be deducted and not taxed. So you have two separate entities now. You get your W-2, you still with your 1040, and on the W-2, it allows you to deduct what has been taken in that first column of income, but on column 14 of your W-2, it'll say what will not be taxed. So that's a great
Mm.
opportunity for you. And as a clergy, doing ministry is a thing that a lot of people overlook, not just pastoring. So when you pastoring at your church, that's one area for deductions or expenses. What about when you get invited to another church and then you're going to receive income? That sets you up to receive a 1099, and your structure that you have set up for yourself or your business, if you will. It could be Gunn's ministry, for an example. And Gunn ministry has several engagements throughout the month or throughout the quarter, bringing in a couple of $1,000s a year. That sets you up with your own business because it's payment away from your W-2, which is the church. So I'll pause right there to make sure I'm on track with answering your question.
Oh, absolutely. I think the confusion sometimes when we're dealing with especially reading the W-2 and understanding what to opt out of is sometimes not as clear, especially when on one hand clergy persons have been told that we're 1099, but in reality we really could be both. And so how do we reconcile both of those, especially on a tax return when when we're especially when we're considering housing allowance? Are we double taxed on that? Um,
That's a good question.
mm-hmm,
You, as a pastor, you bring yourself to work. You don't have to bring any tools like a carpenter, no tools like a plumber or anything. So you are an employee of the church.
mm-hmm,
Now let's use for this analogy the minister of music. The minister of music in some churches, some places, brings their own piano there. Some
mm-hmm.
drummers bring their own drummer. Guitar players bring their guitars and their amps. So they're considered a subcontractor. They can receive a 1099. Now, if the church opts to pay them as a
Oh,
W-2,
mm-hmm,
as an employee, that's the discussion between them two. Whereas the
mm-hmm,
pastor does not bring anything to work but themselves. So they are employee of the church. That's how they get to rate the W-2, which will list the house allowance that must be negotiated during the end of the year, no later than the first month of the year.
mm-hmm,
So at this point, if you were getting, well, I was receiving uh, $50,000 in salary, and I showed them my expenses for maintaining my home, and it came up to be 50 or 60% of that 50K, then we will negotiate and understand in writing that 25% of my pay will be housing allowance, 25% of my pay will be, excuse me, 50% of my pay will be housing allowance, and the other $25,000 will be in my W-2, which would be tax. Whereas the musician that brings his piano to the church, leaves it at the church, comes to work at the church, they are in a position where they can receive a 1099 at the end of the year for two reasons. One, they receive more than $600, $1,200. And two, is they qualify as a subcontractor. They qualify as an independent professional, if that helps you.
that was amazing. I've never heard it explained like that. I love that. Thank you
Mm.
for sharing that. I'm going to acknowledge the Reverend Queen Yancy, who is the sister of Reverend David Yancy. I met Queen Yancy. She was a classmate of mine when I first got to Memphis in 2009. And her question is this: how do I report my housing allowance correctly to ensure it is excluded from income tax, but included for self-employment tax?
And that's a unique question. The qualified, the key symbol for qualifying for housing allowance is the church writing what will be issued on the W-2.
Mm-hmm.
The rule primarily pertains to pastors. The pastor and the church can designate staff that work with them or in their stead. Um, and again, that would be a topic for your independent church because all churches is not just one basket that's going to fit everybody. So your
Mm-hmm.
pastor might have a handicap situation. Your pastor might have some dual obligation where he cannot be available on Sundays because of his traveling. So he can designate, she can designate, they can designate, that church can designate people to visit the sick, provide communion, go to homes and hospitals. Do those things and be on call when the pastor is not available, and that will cause them to be in a position to possibly receive housing allowance. So that's the first thing. Make sure that you can receive it from the church on the W-2.
Mm. Thank you for the question, Reverend Queen. Um, to shift just a little bit, but not too much, what are the most frequent clergy tax return errors that you see?
When the first one is that they don't file housing, they don't claim housing allowance, or they hadn't set it up to receive housing allowance, similar to the question that was asked by
Mm-hmm.
Queen. Uh, the second item is there can be other deductions in regards to your um, form called 2106. The church will not pay you for everything, but the IRS can allow you to deduct certain travel, certain professional garments that you have to wear, certain professional attire that you need to purchase. Um, there might be trips overseas, or not overseas, excuse me. There might be trips to conferences domestically that the church provides you some funds for to compensate, but not 100% of your compensation. So there are some areas that must be tracked first. Just track your expenses, track your costs first. And if the church is not 100% refunding you or reimbursing you and you're providing that service, those are some deductions that can be deducted.
Mm. How do you keep track of all of that? Is there an app that you would suggest, or is it just Excel spreadsheet or paper journal, pen?
Your latter comments are the best way. I would refer to my wife and you and Queen and everybody else on the line regarding to apps and what's easier to track. Uh, I mentioned earlier that it took me 7 years to get my associate's degree, so I was proud to walk across the stage in 1986 and of course, all of the computer apps and doing taxes, we were doing it by hand and doing it by with pencil and coming back and tracing over it in ink and
Mhm.
submitting it to the IRS. So I'm still that old school guy, uh,
What?
and I enjoy
Bless you.
tracking it with the stubby pencil. I enjoy tracking it on the spreadsheet, and that's as far as I'm gonna go with the apps, but there are apps out there and I don't discount them.
Hmm.
And know what's good for you, whatever, it's like budgeting.
Hmm.
Know what's good for you to keep track of it. The bottom line is when the question is answered, excuse me, the question is asked, what proof do you have and how did you derive at this amount? You just need to give an answer. They don't care how you tracked it. They just want the answer and they want the documentation.
Mm. I appreciate that. Hopefully somebody is on here that the Lord is moving in their spirit to be able to make an app that is specific for clergy taxes. Budgeting, all those things out be great. If we have somebody that desires to do that, please let us know. Um, Share with us, if you can, what are some proven ways that we as clergy can reduce our overall tax liability?
And that's an excellent question. It starts a little bit every day.
Hmm.
To have the discipline every week, every month.
Mhm.
To start doing April right now, to set your structure and set your entity, how you are going to do ministry. It is a business. Make no mistake. You are clergy, are uniquely called and ordained, and uh, to do ministry, to do a work. I mean, doctors and lawyers, accountants like myself, investors, we are uniquely skilled and qualified to do work. Um, just so happen our focus is from a biblical sense, we're responsible for souls, soul, and being responsible for souls and how people um, continue to keep hope and maintain their salvation is slightly different from other professions. But the paperwork and the laws still apply the same to the doctors, the lawyers, the clergy. So if you know you're strictly just going to pastor, you're not going to be doing missionary work, you're not going to be doing evangelism, then the pastorship is as far as you need to go with the receiving the W-2 form, filing your 1040s, and continue to thank God for the opportunity to serve. However, if you're going to be an evangelist, if you're going to practice the prophetic ministry or fivefold ministry, if you have opportunity to go and spread the word, preach or do ministry and receive pay outside of your church, outside of your pastorship W-2, then you need to have at least an EIN number, employee identification number. So that's where we get into structuring how you're going to present yourself to the IRS. With your structure as an EIN, you can move into being an independent or individual entrepreneur, LLC, limited liability company, or you may choose to elect to be a S Corp or a C corporation. It's nothing wrong with that. Many pastors do that because you're separating what you're getting uh, from the church and providing to the church, which is an exchange of your skills and qualities based on what God has blessed you with, and the people are receiving that. And when you go abroad, when you go outside the walls of the church, when you help in the community, when you continue to be part of those things that cost money and you receive money, not just preaching at other churches, not just putting on conferences throughout the quarter, not just showing up on podcasts and receiving income, but you're structured on whatever you receive, you have an ability to report it to the IRS outside of the outside of the 1040 form. And that's when you can really get into the benefits of deductions.
Oh, that's wonderful. I think whenever presented with um, conversations about clergy taxes, I have not heard, or this is the first time, the last time we talked was the first time I heard about it, but creating a LLC or a separate entity in order to house your additional
Right,
finances.
right.
Can you speak more to the benefits of that, and then how to even get started?
Again, just like
Mm-hmm.
any other business, it can go
Mm-hmm.
as simple as the guy that has a lawn service that's cutting the neighbor's yard, and all of a sudden he buys two or three pieces of equipment and the whole neighborhood now. And for instead of $100, he's making $1,000 every week cutting grass. Uh, but the write-offs without an EIN keeps him under the radar. The
Mm.
benefit of structuring correctly, it helps the government. I mean, we all going to pay taxes, and it's evident that we all are going to go on to glory, at least is our prayer. Uh, so if you're going to pay taxes, your goal is structure it correctly, like the law allows you to. And sometimes you'll pay less taxes, sometimes you will pay no taxes. But without the right structure, you're leaving it in the hands of one, not reporting it at all, or
Mm,
two, not doing it correctly.
mm,
So from a clergy point of view, um, you're not getting an EIN or you're not starting a business because you're pastoring. You're creating an EIN so you can have a bank account open. You're creating an LLC so you can have a bank account open. So now you can track your income and expenses through your bank statement. So that
mm,
helps with the accounting. You won't need as many people like myself or as much as my time to get you structured. The
mhm,
second thing is you're already doing the ministry. I mean, when we had that big ice back in January, there were several good-hearted people, even some clergy and even some lay people out helping people with their homes, out helping cars get stuck that was on the freeway, had to pull them out because they had the equipment, they had the vehicles, or they just wanted to help. Well, there's a thing there that you uh, have equipment that you can deduct. But if you don't have the structure set up, all you're doing is just people offer you money, people, and you say, no, just be a blessing. Go and be blessed, my brother, my sister. And I'm okay with that. It has happened to me and I did it. But at the same time, that chain that you use to pull them out, the vehicle, the Hummer that you have to pull them out, that's an expense because you use gas, you use your tires, you did a lot of expense there that is deductible. Did you
mhm.
receive any income from it? No. But is that in your area of doing ministry? Is that in your area of helping others? Yes. So now you just created that expense. I'll pause again for.
Who do we need to go to in order to connect with to start? I am very interested uh in what you're talking about. And I'm also giving leading you into sharing what we talked about earlier to be able to share that on here.
Well, only for you, Pastor God. This is a unique season for me. I'm glad to have my sister in town helping me and my wife because it is maybe after the tax season would be better. But
Okay.
we talked to Dr. John and myself. We will offer like a half an hour, 30-minute consultation to see where you are, show you how to get started. A lot of people will go to. My son's a tattoo artist, and he finds himself correcting people tattoos as well as
Mm,
providing some type of first aid for tattoos that are not done right. And a lot of people go to YouTube these days, and there are a lot of information. There is information, good information on YouTube, but still it comes down to the practical application.
mhm,
I would just recommend that you understand it from Dr. J, myself, or your tax professional first, get it structured correctly. Then you may be able to do without us because you have it set up correctly. But getting started with most people can go ahead and do that and employee identification number themselves with the IRS. We can guide you to how to do that. Setting up the structure, paying the Tennessee taxes and getting registered with the Tennessee to pay those taxes through the Tennessee Revenue Office is important. So there's some more details and not just going out there setting it up. So we'll be glad to help. I think you have the information, Dr. Gunn, from last time on how to contact myself or Dr. John. And during this session, anybody that's on that need a half an hour to get things going to talk, we're willing to do that.
awesome. Thank you so much. Does anybody have any questions before I move forward to my next question? Please place your questions in the chat. I have gotten this question, so I'm going to ask it. What do clergy need to do if they have not filed their clergy taxes in a long time? Where do they need to start?
Mhm. The good news is, and that's I'm glad you asked that question. That question is so easy. I tell you what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna let Dr. John. That question is such an easy question. We're gonna let him warm up with people who have not filed taxes. We can start with uh, at least the last 3 years of the information, and then we can start getting the other information. Don't you think, Dr. J?
Have they not filed returns in a while?
Yeah,
Hmm.
The best thing to do is start where you are and work backwards.
yeah,
Your current year, and what would typically happen is once the current year is done, I reach out to the Internal Revenue Service and get a compliance review, and they can tell me what years are missing or what years need to be filed. Sometime, based on their records, no return is required yet. So we just
mhm,
file a zero return, so it's not missing for sake of self-employment taxes or Social Security benefits later on down the road.
mhm.
Uh, the most difficult thing is getting over the fear and the embarrassment of not filing for so long. Uh, for people like me and Mr. Yancy, we're not judging. We're here to help. And so if you're not filed in 6 years, if you don't be ashamed about it, I can assure you we're not ashamed about it at all.
That's right.
The biggest hurdle is getting over that hump of I'm embarrassed, I don't know how it happened, you know. Sometimes people have fear of taxes and they don't want to deal with it until they
Yeah,
have absolutely have to. So starting with the current year, if it's this year, working on year 2025, get it filed and then work backwards.
yes. Let me add, we're not bound like lawyers and doctors with HIPAA and areas that we uh, receive information from, but we are bound by keeping your information safe and secure, that your social security numbers and things don't get leaked out. And we take it a little further. I know Dr. J and I take it a little further. What goes on in our office stays in our office. Your personal
Absolutely.
information is not discussed with our other clients. And nor as our other clients, unless we ask them, can we use you as an example on how to get things started? But for the most part, most being 95% of the time, uh, your information is not shared with anyone except for our employees.
Mm, wonderful. Thank you all for sharing that. Now, Dr. Crittle, that you're on, do you mind sharing a bit about yourself with the people that are currently on the Zoom?
I'm a very tired individual who's been doing taxes. I've already logged in about 36 hours this week already.
Wow.
This is the last week of tax season, and we're working pretty much 12, 16 hours days now.
Mm,
Um, I enjoy doing this. I do a lot of accounting work because when it comes to clergy, it's about understanding the principles of accounting and how that flows into having a healthy tax return. Um, and it's about planning. And so I spend a lot of time planning people. If you have a situation this year where you owe several thousand dollars, we try to figure out how to get you on a payment plan and then make preparations so that it doesn't repeat next year. So it's about planning. Uh, that's kind of what I do. And you want to know who I am? Uh, I'm a person like to have fun every single day,
this is true.
enjoy life to the fullest. Uh, and failure to plan on your part does not make an emergency on my part.
Hmm.
So, but I'm going to enjoy life. I enjoy what I do. Uh, I teach this kind of stuff in the classroom. I practice it in the real world. And I'm thankful to God that I have the experience and opportunity to minister to people and help them out. And this is a sacred ministry to me. Uh,
Hmm.
I am not on the side of of the Internal Revenue Service. I'm on the side of the taxpayer. And we represent people like you who do not know or who may have some fear. Sometimes who've been misled by other people in our profession. We're here to guide and put you at ease and say, this is how it's going to happen. And it happens just like that because we're going to be truthful with you because no sense lying to you or lying for you. It's just, here's the facts and we roll with them.
Awesome. I am interested for you to share with the people that are on here. Whenever you were talking about last time, when you do almost like a intake with the client that you create, and I can't remember what the term was, but you create like a plan of action of things that they need to do throughout the year in order to maximize their benefits.
Yes. If I'm particularly with a new client,
Mm-hmm.
I'm interviewing them and their uh, spending habits. Sometimes just in the conversation, I can pick up on something that may be so small that could lead to a tax break. Uh, I've had people, for an example, in conversation, they said, my wife and I, we took, the Yancy with us to a trip to Orlando. And I said, what's your relationship to them? Well, he preached for me and I preached for him. Sound like a business trip to me, you know. And you can easily, document it as such. There's no law that says you can't have a business trip in Orlando. Uh, just discuss business, whether you're flying there or you go there for lunch or whatever the case may be, and it can
Mm-hmm.
become a legitimate business expense. Understanding a person spending habits, what their financial goals are, helps me to help them better do what they're doing, what they have. The ultimate goal is, what is your goal? And if we can find out what that goal is, how can we best, knowing what we know about the laws, rules, and regulations, how can we best help you achieve those goals that you can do in such a way to keep you happy and the Internal Revenue Service happy at the same time? A win-win situation for everybody.
Amen. Thank you for
Absolutely.
sharing. Oh, Reverend Yancey, you were going to share something?
Absolutely. He hit it right on the head.
Super. So this is our last leg of this episode. I want to talk about retirement planning and in what unique retirement challenges do clergy face and how can they overcome them under tax regulations like 403Bs and Roth options? Mm.
Um, I'll start, Dr. J. Uh, Earlier, we talked about structure and we
Mm-hmm.
talked about receiving the W-2 form and only having a 1040 form to work with.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about having a EIN number, and we talked about structuring a business if you're doing more ministry than just pastoring one church or receiving income simply from one church. Um, the church needs to be able to set it up if they don't have anything, but the individual is responsible for their own retirement. Let me say it again, the individual is responsible for their own retirement. If they're working on a job, they can go through a 401k. If the church doesn't have a retirement plan, like some denominations have retirement plans, some denominations do not, then I'll start by saying there's two ways. Look at it from an individual business point of view. The business needs to go out and get the right help to set up a 401k. It can be a brokerage firm. It can be Charles Schwab. It can be any of these brokers that provide that service to structure your company, your church with this 401k or retirement plan. Now, the individual themselves should have a brokerage firm, should be part of saving for the future as well through a Roth, IRAs, but more importantly, uh, young people starting in the ministry in their 20s and 30s, it is nothing wrong with them becoming a great um, LLC, for an example, and continue to move through the benefits of not only setting up a retirement plan or education plan, but the company that they set up can deduct. You'll pay yourself a reasonable salary. You pay into your retirement. You pay into your education. And your money that you're paying into it through the business is tax deductible as an expense. So basically, you're paying yourself to reap your own benefits. Um, and then there's a budgeting piece that goes into it. You have to have the discipline to not just have savings account and then work with the bank with your certificates of deposits. Get your emergency fund, $3,000 to $5,000 out the way, and then you start moving money for retirement into those brokerage firms. You don't have to take a lot of risks, but I'll pause right there, and that can be something that we can include in that initial interview on how to help with that retirement. Turn over to Dr. J.
Well, retirement is without a doubt is a very interesting and intricate piece of the clergy person's financial package. Um, Unfortunately, congregations do not see the retirement as a necessity. They try to see how much we're going to pay, and that's about it. They don't want to talk about the benefits. And as a matter of fact, I had a meeting last night with a group of clergy persons. It's a connection type church, and I share with them, when you talk about being a person with double honor, I think part of the honor ought to be in retirement and benefits, not just straight salary, but ought to be some retirement planning and some benefit plannings, because most people in our congregations who are employed have benefits.
Mm-hmm.
And for some reason, there's a disconnect and my benefits as a congregant and having benefits for my pastor. You know, somehow I just believe that God's going to take care of the pastor, so he don't need no benefits.
Mm.
And unfortunately, that's the way a lot of people think. So it's education and enlightenment on both from the pulpit and then the pew. Also, I think the piece for retirement has to be a piece that the pastor feel very strongly about, so that as he or she's talked to their people that's in the finance committee who's responsible for the disbursement of funds at the church, can see that you're very passionate about this, and it makes sense
Right.
because people who are in our churches, they have some kind of retirement program,
Yeah.
and so clergy persons have the same kinds of benefit,
Mm-hmm.
and so I don't really focus on trying to get salary for pastors as much as I do benefits and retirement. And pastors are struggling, and I say this often, no matter who the pastor is, where he
Yeah.
is, she is serving,
Right.
how much they're
Right.
getting paid, they are underpaid for the work they do at the church they serve. Uh, and so the retirement thing, and if you start this thing when you started in minute 25 or 30 years of age, you could literally retire with a couple of $1 million in your retirement account
Yes.
because
Yes.
time, uh, over the years with the interest, I think the rule of 72 kicks in and you start doubling, and before you know it, and it doesn't take a whole lot of money to get to be $1 million or $2 million in a retirement fund. It takes consistency over time.
Right.
Now, if a person start out with something simple as $300 a month, uh, and do that, that's $3,600 in the first year. And as things begin to progress, you increase your retirement contribution. Uh, and you could literally, what begins to happen, those funds begin to earn revenue or interest or dividends. And I like to make sure they stay in the account so the account keep growing with the monthly contributions from the pastor. And what can happen is, after about 35, 40 years, you can afford to retire.
Amen. Amen.
Mm.
And I would like to
That's a
add
good point. Mm-hmm.
a lot. This is not for everybody, especially when it comes to education and not being aware. Um, Many times there's myths out there for minorities about having X amount of money to start investing. Investing can start with your bank, your certificate of deposits, can move into bonds. In the military, I remember there used to be uh, you could spend $50 on a bond and it would double in 3 years. Then it went to 5 years, 7 years, and now it's about 13 years for that same money to double. But as Dr. J was saying, if it's not for you and you do not have the discipline to handle your own money, that's why
Mhm.
brokerage companies are out there. I spend most of my time investing and helping people with managing their investing and giving them advice on what funds to be in and what stocks to have and what companies paying dividends. Just this morning, we was identifying Johnson and Johnson and Pfizer and Verizon paying dividends higher and been consistently paying dividends for the last 20 years. And that investment piece is not known to everybody. And as Dr. J says, some people are just afraid that they're going to lose money. Well, the thing is, if you don't know how to uh, change your light bulb, or if you don't know how to fix a switch or receptacle or plug in your house, you're going to call an electrician. Well, some people are shade tree electricians, but even they get to a point where there are things they're not going to do. They're going to call the electrician. So I'm just
Mhm.
sharing with you. Like you said, today is a good day to start. Start in April, get through this year in 2026 and continue to put money and invest in it. And oh, by the way, if you have about $25,000 sitting around in the savings account and it's not earning money, you need to have a broker because that's all you need to start your brokerage account. And those are things we can discuss during the first, free session.
Mm. One thing that I like that has been highlighted in our conversation is the variety of ways that you all are talking about us to be able to maximize and optimize our finances. Not just salary, but retirement, CDs. I believe Reverend Yancy, I don't think you made mention that you're also considered a master trader. Isn't that what's on your website, Master Trader? Um,
Yeah,
all of these investments, and even developing your own business and LLC to be able to pay yourself. And so it's all these different things, these options that we have. Where would a clergy person be able to glean information or insight as to how to diversify their portfolio of income as well as their investments? Because this is not a conversation that I'm hearing that's happening quite often.
Mhm.
Mhm.
I will let Dr. J go first. I do have some reservations about it because the conversation is not for everybody. We can talk till we blue in the face, red in the
Yeah.
face, eyes buck, and people will walk away and not do anything. So, Dr. J,
Well, I think it's for those who are serious about enjoying the fruits of their labor.
Hmm.
Um, and I think people like myself, Reverend Yancy, we don't have any time to waste. So we can tell that about the first 2 minutes where this conversation is going.
Mm.
You know, uh, we're here to help, but we're not here to waste our time.
Yeah.
Um, some people will rather have information from some charlatan, so to speak, because it
Hmm.
sounded good and it has no fact to what they've heard. And once they get out there and it costs them several thousands of dollars, then they want to come back and want us to pick up the pieces. And sometimes there are no pieces to pick up.
have
Hmm.
mercy. Have mercy.
Uh, but the thing is, every situation is unique because pastors are different. Their their pastorate is different. Even in connectional churches, I have some clergy persons who are part of the connectional church, and one congregation they serve is spot on. They understand what they're doing. They get appointed to another church that makes more money, but the people they're working with have no clue.
Mm.
So it's not always the size of the church. It's where the people are that's in the church.
Yeah.
And a bigger church doesn't necessarily mean they understand it in better or can do better. So you have to have someone you can understand what you're going through, that each appointment is a unique appointment.
Mm.
Mm.
And when we try to make it a one size fit all, it's going to be terrible for everybody involved.
That's
Uh,
right. That's right.
and so you have to, that's why when we're talking, it seems
Hmm.
like we're talking over here, over here, and over here. No, it's not that we're just scattering. We also recognize that there are so many potential options for a person to have, depending on what's going on in their lives, or what they hope to go on. Uh, to give an example, a pastor who is working for a church and that's all he does, his housing allowance can be X number of dollars, which may not be enough to cover his actual housing expenses. Well, another pastor can be bivocational, and maybe what he getting from the church is enough to cover all his housing allowance, but his salary actually comes from the bivocational, the secular job, and not the sacred job.
Mm.
So it's a situation you have to kind of weigh out. It could be that you have a wife or a spouse that's working and you're serving as bivocational. Then if it's that way and you don't have any children or your children are grown, you have more money to look at for investing opportunities for retirement. What do you want to be, 10 years from now? Those are the kind of things that's so unique. So it's not a one size kind of fit all. And each one carries a different kind of tax responsibility, but at the end of the day, it's all going to be tax fair.
Right.
Awesome. Thank you all for answering those questions. I think that also reiterates why it's so important to meet with you all one on one to do the consultation so that you all will be able to see um, what situation a person is in so that they'll be able to get a custom made plan that will be beneficial for them in their situation. So I
Amen.
really
Amen.
appreciate that so much. But do you all have any final thoughts before we sign off?
Thanks for the opportunity.
Yes.
This is awesome. So I hope that you all that are watching will be able to connect with Dr. Crittle or Reverend Yancy. And so we'll be able to send you their contact information so that you'll be able to take advantage of that 30-minute consultation meeting that they're giving away for free. And so if I don't have your email address, if you don't mind uh, emailing me, I'll put my email address the uh in the chat, and so you can email me to make sure that I have your email so that when I send their information for the 30-minute free consultation, uh, you'll be able to get that information. But thank you all for joining us
You.
for this clergy taxes episode. Um, we will have another episode on August 14th. August. Why am I in August? April. In April on April 14th at noon, and we will be discussing. I believe it is. Let me get that information for you. The topic will be financial literacy. Sandra Bailey and Evan Collins will be joining us, and we'll be talking about the mindset that's needed in order to not only be taught financial literacy, but to begin practicing it. I know when I talk to people about financial literacy, I normally will give them a money autobiography because there is memories, there is sometimes trauma that is attached to people's practices of how they view money. One of the questions that I ask that always gets people laughing is when you were little and you saw McDonald's and you were in the back seat and you said, "Mama, Daddy, can we get McDonald's?" What was their response? And most people will say, "Do you have McDonald's money?" But when we say, "Do you have McDonald's money?" for the young person, that teaches them scarcity versus teaching them to budget. Instead of saying, "Do you have McDonald's money?" ask, "Is it in the budget?" Because what we say yes to, we have to say no to something else. So if we get McDonald's, then we won't be able to do our movie night on Friday. And it helps people to make better decisions in how we have conversations in our formation about theology of money and debt. And so join us next time. Make sure that you bring your questions with you. And again, we want to thank Reverend David Yancy and Dr. John Crittle, who have been friends of mine for decades. Thank you all so much for coming. Thank you to our audience for joining us, and stick with us because Green Couch Exchange exists to empower faithful stewardship. Thank you all and have a great day.
Thank y'all.
Have a good evening. Thank you for the invite.
Thank you, sir. Take care.